I was already halfway across the ballroom when my father's voice cracked through the microphone like a whip. Ava Morgan has agreed to give her sister the Skyline District penthouse as a wedding gift. 100 guests burst into applause. The chandeliers sparkled above them as if cheering along. Emily covered her mouth in staged surprise, her veil fluttering dramatically. And every head turned toward me. The woman they assumed had just surrendered a $2.5 million home because family comes first. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I said one word. No. The applause died instantly. A fork clattered onto a plate. Someone gasped. My father's smile stiffened, cracking at the edges. He stepped off the stage grip, tightening around the microphone. "Ava," he growled through clenched teeth, "don't embarrass us. Say yes." "No," I repeated louder this time. That was when he snapped. "Get out." His shout ricocheted across the ballroom, bouncing off the crystal walls and landing square against my chest. Before I could take a breath, before I could even register the silence that followed, my mother came charging through the table's heels, stabbing the marble floor like gunshots. Her hand flew up. The slap exploded through the speakers. My cheek burned from the impact. My diamond earring flew across the polished floor with a sharp metallic ping. 100 guests froze, forks in midair, jaws hanging open. Emily whimpered into her bouquet. My father stood rigid. My mother trembled, chest rising and falling as she held the microphone in a death grip, the cord coiling around her wrist like a snake. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I simply looked at her and said, "You shouldn't have done that." Then I turned, lifted my clutch, and walked out of the ballroom without waiting for permission. The doors slammed behind me. I took out my phone, pressed one contact, and said 4 words: "Execute the protocol now." 1 hour later, when the man on the other end of that call walked into the wedding, my entire family froze. I kept walking until the noise of violins and forced laughter dwindled into nothing but a distant hum behind the thick hotel walls. The hallway smelled of lilies and citrus cleaner, a strange contrast to the metallic tang still lingering in my mouth from the slap. Guests outside the ballroom doorway parted from me as though I were radioactive. My face throbbed, my pulse hammered, but my steps stayed steady. A bellhop standing near the elevator stared with wide eyes. "Miss, You didn't see anything," I said calmly. His voice trembled. "Your mother, she hit you." I pressed the elevator button. She did. And she will deal with what comes next. Inside, the elevator metal doors slid shut, muting the chaos behind me. Alone with my reflection in the mirrored panel, I finally let out a breath. My cheek was flushed red, the shape of my mother's hand faintly visible. My earring was missing a small empty spot marking where it used to be. I lifted my hand, touched the tender skin, and felt something I hadn't felt all day. Control. The elevator dinged. I stepped into the lobby where wedding guests stood hovering near the entrance, whispering in tight circles. Someone pointed, murmuring, "She's the one." Another said, "I heard she refused a penthouse." Who refuses a penthouse? But there were also quieter voices. That mother should be ashamed. I'd walk out too. I pushed open the revolving door and stepped into the brisk Seattle evening. The sky had turned a muted lavender, and the first drops of rain began tapping against the sidewalk. My ride idled at the curb, one of the company drivers Ethan had sent just in case. I hadn't understood why he insisted earlier. Now I did. The driver rolled down the window. "Miss Morgan, yes. Mister? Lou told me to wait for your call." Of course he did. I slid into the back seat, exhaling the tension that had been strangling me since dawn. My phone buzzed, notifications rolling one after another across the screen. Live stream clips, comments, messages. The live stream from the ballroom was still running. Viewers 847 and rising. Title: Mother slaps daughter at wedding. My stomach tightened for a moment, just a moment before anger and clarity replaced the shock. They had turned me into a spectacle. They had bet everything on the hope that I would stay quiet, stay small, stay obedient. They didn't know me at all. The driver glanced at me through the mirror. "You sure you want to go to the address Mr. Liu sent? Yes. Take me there." He nodded and pulled away from the curb. Seattle buzzed all around us as we drove, rain streaking down the windows, neon lights blurring into watercolors. I replayed the scene in my head, the applause, the false announcement, the slap. My mother's eyes filled with rage, not remorse. My father's voice cracking as he screamed, "Get out!" Emily performing her heartbreak like she'd rehearsed it. I felt no guilt for leaving. They had already kicked me out. All I had done was walk. My phone buzzed with another text. "Ethan Liu, 5 minutes away from the hotel. Phase 1 initiated." I typed back quickly, "Proceed." Only 2 people in Seattle knew what Phase 1 meant. Ethan and me. Rain drummed softly on the roof as we approached downtown. The driver turned onto Pine Street, passing storefronts glowing with warm light. Somewhere above us, the glass exterior of my penthouse tower scraped the sky. My sanctuary. My peace. The very thing my parents tried to steal in front of 100 witnesses. The car slowed as we neared the building's entrance. My cheek throbbed again, less from pain, more from memory. I touched it lightly, then whispered to myself, "Never again." I stepped out, the lobby's marble floors gleaming under soft gold lighting. James the doorman straightened when he saw me. Concern clouded his eyes. "Miss Morgan, are you all right?" "I will be. Your face I know." He hesitated, then added quietly, "If someone hurt you, that's not family." My throat tightened, but I nodded once before moving toward the elevator. Inside my penthouse, everything was still. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the entire Seattle skyline wrapped in fog and rain. The city lights shimmered on the water like fractured stars. This was my home, earned through years of work, long nights, and brutal deals across the Asia-Pacific markets. Every inch reflected my independence. I set my clutch down, placed an ice pack on my cheek, and waited. The livestream's viewer count climbed again, 1120 watchers. Comments poured in, "Who hits their grown daughter? She handled that like a queen." "Where did the penthouse come from? Is she rich?" They had no idea. A new notification popped up. Ethan Liu entering the hotel. That was the moment I allowed myself a slow, steady breath. "They wanted a scene," I whispered. "They're about to get one." Somewhere across the city, Ethan Liu, the man my family didn't know, controlled 35% of my father's company, was walking through the doors of the Watercrest Hotel. And when he reached that ballroom, nothing in my family's world would ever be the same. I arrived at the Watercrest Hotel at 8 that morning, thinking I was just here to support my sister on her perfect day. The lobby was already buzzing with florists rushing past, planners whispering into headsets, violinists tuning their strings. White orchids hung from every archway, and the whole place smelled like roses and cold marble. Emily had always dreamed of a wedding that looked like a royal coronation, and apparently my parents had spared no expense making sure she got it. But the moment my mother saw me, her smile vanished like it had been yanked off her face. She looked me up and down the way someone examines a stain on a tablecloth. "Is that what you're wearing, Ava? It looks like business attire. Couldn't you have chosen something more feminine?" My navy silk dress skimmed the floor, elegant and understated. "Good morning to you too," I said, adjusting the strap. "Emily looks beautiful today." My mother didn't acknowledge the greeting. "A real bride glows," she said. "Emily is radiant. Absolutely radiant." The implication landed exactly the way she intended. I breathed in slowly. The ballroom doors were open, revealing a stunning scene inside: silver tableware, crystal glasses, gold-backed chairs. 100 guests would be arriving within hours. It should have felt magical. Instead, it felt like I was walking into a battlefield. Emily floated toward us in a satin robe like some kind of storybook princess. "Ava, you're here. We've got so much to do. Can you check the gift table? And maybe make sure the bridesmaids' bouquets arrived?" I blinked. "Isn't that the coordinator's job?" Emily giggled, waving her hand. She's busy with my hair trial. You're so organized, it'll take you 2 minutes. I wanted to say no, but the look in my mother's eyes told me that refusing would become today's first open indictment of my character. Fine, I said. I'll check. As I moved around the ballroom, relatives began to appear like moths drawn to a flame, except I was the flame they wanted to smother. Aunt Rebecca leaned in close. Still single, Ava. You're wasting your youth with that career. Uncle Jared chuckled from behind her. Yeah, you're the career girl. No wonder you don't have a family. Then my cousin Natalie chimed in loud enough for others to hear. Is it true you live in some tiny apartment near the pier? I paused, smoothing a table runner. No, that's not true. Well, she said with a condescending shrug, you don't have to be embarrassed. Not everyone can afford luxury. My lips twitched. My penthouse on the 39th floor, the one with copper fixtures and a panoramic view of the Sound, was nothing close to tiny. But there was no point correcting them. They believed whatever narrative made them feel superior. Behind me, I heard another whispered voice. She thinks she owns a penthouse, please. Probably renting a studio. Their laughter scraped across my skin like sandpaper. They had no idea who I really was, what I actually did, what I actually owned. And for a long time, a part of me preferred it that way. Keeping my professional achievements separate from my family was the only way to survive family gatherings without turning into a bragging competition. Still, the sting was there, a familiar one. The golden child walks in, the invisible daughter fades out. Sweetheart, my father called from across the room. Come check the seating chart. I walked over and immediately saw the problem. Divorced couples grouped together, competitors, put side by side, an elderly aunt shoved into the back corner. This needs to be rearranged, I said. Don't reorganize everything like you always do, he snapped before I finished. Emily wants the tables this way. It doesn't make sense. It's her day. Don't overthink. I swallowed the words burning in my throat. This was classic Charles Morgan, the man who praised Emily for breathing and called me difficult for pointing out obvious issues. But none of it prepared me for what I overheard next. I'd stepped into the side hallway to check on the card box when I heard my father's voice, low, secretive, but not low enough. We'll announce it during the reception, he was saying. She won't dare refuse in front of everyone, my mother answered, sounding smug. Exactly. Ava hates public scenes. She'll give in to avoid embarrassment. My breath caught. They were talking about me. They were talking about the penthouse. Then Emily's voice chimed in, light, airy, but unmistakably entitled. She doesn't even need it. She lives alone. And I mean, come on, what does she even do with that much space? The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. So it wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a moment of parental excitement gone too far. They had planned to ambush me, planned it in advance, planned to weaponize the audience and force me into giving away the one thing I'd built entirely on my own. A cold, steady clarity shot through my chest. I stepped back before they noticed me and returned to the ballroom where the planner was assembling the floral centerpieces. I reached out to adjust one out of habit, only to stop when I realized my hand was trembling ever so slightly. A bridesmaid approached me with a bright smile. Ava, just wanted to remind you we're live streaming the reception for Emily's followers. Full coverage. I froze. Full coverage. Oh yes, everything from the toast to the big surprise Emily said is coming later. Isn't it exciting? My stomach tightened. Full coverage, live stream. An audience. A perfect trap. For a second, I pictured how it would look, 100 people clapping, cameras everywhere, my father declaring my gift before I even had a chance to speak. And if I refused, I'd become the villain of Emily's fairy tale wedding. Not a daughter, a prop, a resource, a scapegoat. I stepped away from the bridesmaid and stood near the far window, staring out at the small lake behind the hotel. I could see my own reflection in the glass, poised, calm, polished. But inside, a storm brewed. Someone placed a hand lightly on my elbow. It was a server. Miss A, word of warning. I overheard some things between your parents earlier. They're planning something big. I nodded. I know. He hesitated, then added, whatever it is, you don't deserve it. Kindness from a stranger. Something I rarely received from my own blood. The ballroom grew louder behind me. Emily laughed her perfect laugh. My mother bragged about the imported orchids. My father entertained investors near the champagne wall as if today were his corporate gala. None of them noticed I was gone. None of them cared. For a moment, the full weight of it settled on me. Not the penthouse, not the money, not even the betrayal. But the realization that I had been invisible for so long, that they assumed I'd stay that way forever. They had no idea that the quiet daughter they shoved aside had built something powerful. They had no idea that the penthouse they thought they could seize was not just a home but a corporate protected asset. They had no idea who they were planning to humiliate, and that was going to be their mistake, not mine. I took one last breath and turned back toward the ballroom, ready to face whatever ambush they had prepared. After 31 years of shrinking myself for their comfort, today would be the last time they underestimated me. Emily stood at the center of the bridal suite, surrounded by bridesmaids, makeup artists, and my mother who hovered behind her like some self-appointed queen. I paused in the doorway unnoticed at first, watching them arrange her veil and fluff her gown, each movement exaggerated, each compliment thrown at her like confetti. Then my mother caught sight of me. Her smile dropped a fraction. Ava, stand back. We don't want to wrinkle Emily's train. Emily turned, forcing a sugary smile. Ava, can you close the door? There's a draft. I closed it. Not because she asked, but because I wanted a second alone with my thoughts. Except even that was denied to me. One of the bridesmaids popped over immediately. Your parents said you might be fragile today, she whispered. Fragile. Right. That was the narrative. I stepped aside, letting everyone brush past me. It was strange standing there while my family buzzed around Emily like she was the sun, and they were planets orbiting her. I felt like a misplaced chair in a room that had been perfectly staged. A flash of memory hit me, being 7 years old, holding up a trophy from a regional math competition. My mother barely looked up from sewing Emily's angel costume for the Christmas play. That's nice, dear, she said, but Emily needs these wings ironed before tomorrow. Then, college. When I got accepted into a top business program out of state, my father said it's too far. Emily needs her sister close by. Every achievement was dismissed, every milestone minimized. Not because I failed, but because I wasn't Emily. I moved toward the makeup table and sat carefully as if not to disturb the atmosphere. Emily laughed as the stylist curled her hair. I hope you're not planning anything dramatic today, Ava. Let's just have a perfect wedding. Okay, I'm not the one making things dramatic, I said quietly. My mother turned sharply. What does that mean? Nothing, I said, smoothing my dress again. But I could feel their eyes on me, judging, analyzing, waiting for me to be the problem, so they could point to me and say, see, we told you so. I slipped out of the suite and walked down the hallway. The hotel carpeting muffled my footsteps, but I could still hear echoes of laughter drifting out of the room behind me. Laughter that had never been meant for me. As I passed the ballroom doors, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirrored panels, calm face, neatly pinned hair, elegant dress. I looked like someone who had everything under control. No one would guess that my entire family saw me as nothing more than an accessory, useful when needed, ignored when not. My phone buzzed. A text from my assistant at Northbridge. Ethan asked if you need security. He's monitoring from HQ. I paused. Ethan Liu was many things, demanding, sharp, infuriatingly observant, but overly dramatic was not one of them. If he thought I might need backup, something serious was brewing. I typed back quickly. Not yet. I'll keep you posted. One of the hotel servers approached cautiously. He had dark circles under his eyes like he'd been running since dawn. Miss Morgan, yes, he lowered his voice. Your parents said to tell the staff to prepare. 2 microphones for the family announcement. My stomach dropped. Did they say what kind of announcement? He shook his head and hurried away, but I didn't need more details. The pit in my stomach told me everything I needed to know. I headed toward the cocktail lounge for a moment of quiet, but a group of relatives intercepted me. Aunt Sally waved at me like she'd spotted a celebrity she barely recognized. How's work still doing that? Finance thing, I'm a senior development director, I said. Oh, honey, she laughed, patting my arm. Such big titles for such a young lady. Cousin Derek smirked. I hear you live paycheck to paycheck in the city. Bet Emily's wedding is costing you a fortune just to keep up. I let out a breath. My finances are fine. Sure, he said, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Of course, they still thought I was struggling. They still thought I was barely scraping by. And that was exactly why they believed they had the right to take what was mine. As I moved away from them, another pair of older guests walked by, whispering but not quietly enough. It's good Emily is getting the penthouse. She'll actually use it. Ava doesn't need all that space. And she's always so difficult. Difficult. A word my family wielded like a knife. I stepped into the cocktail lounge, finally alone. The soft clinking of glasses from the bar mingled with the distant hum of wedding preparations. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched the lake glitter under the late morning sun. I could breathe again, but only for a minute. A server entered the lounge, glanced around hesitantly, then walked toward me. Miss Morgan, yes, I don't mean to intrude, but I overheard something earlier. Your parents, they're planning something. They talked about an announcement that would force your hand. I didn't react outwardly, but inside something snapped into cold, precise focus. Force my hand. That was exactly their plan. Thank you, I said softly. I appreciate it. He nodded quickly and walked off, leaving me alone with my reflection in the window again. I thought of the penthouse, the sweeping glass walls, the quiet mornings overlooking Elliott Bay, the long nights working on Asia-Pacific deals worth more than my parents could imagine. That home wasn't a gift. It wasn't luck. It wasn't inherited. It was earned, every inch of it. And unbeknownst to my family, the penthouse wasn't even a traditional private property. It was part of my executive compensation, protected by corporate legal structure bound under Clause 11.6, which specifically prevented any transfer under coercion. No one in my family knew that. Just one more thing they didn't care to know. The ballroom down the hall erupted in another round of laughter, Emily's voice rising above the rest, sweet and delicate, while mine stayed buried beneath years of assumptions and gaslighting. Invisible. A bridesmaid ran into the lounge, suddenly startled to see me. Ava, there you are. Just wanted to make sure you heard we're live streaming the entire reception, the whole thing. My head lifted. Live streaming. Oh yes, Emily said. Her followers deserve to see every moment, including their trap. The bridesmaid left humming. I stood alone in the golden light of the lounge, hands clasped lightly in front of me. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, not from fear, but from understanding. They weren't just taking advantage of me. They were erasing me. Again, but this time I wasn't 7. I wasn't 19. I wasn't a daughter desperate for approval. I was a woman with power they still refused to see. I stepped toward the door leading back to the ballroom. If they wanted a show, I would give them one. Just not the one they expected. Guests drifted into the ballroom in shimmering dresses and tailored suits, their chatter floating beneath the soft glide of the violin quartet. The chandeliers cast golden rings across the polished floor, making everything look like a fairy tale if you didn't know the rot underneath. I stood near the back, hands clasped loosely, watching the spectacle unfold like an outsider who had wandered into the wrong life. Emily appeared at the entrance with her new husband, both beaming as though they had just stepped off a magazine cover. People swarmed them with congratulations, and my mother hovered nearby, glowing with pride that radiated only in one direction. I stayed where I was. No one noticed. No one asked where I'd been. Then the planner whispered something to my father, and he straightened with determination. I saw the stack of folded index cards in his hand and felt a cold prickle down my spine. This was it. My father climbed onto the small stage at the center of the room. The violinists faded out. Conversation slowed to a murmur, then quieted completely. The spotlight followed him, as if the entire wedding were a theater production, and he was the lead. I sensed my mother scanning the room. When her gaze landed on me, she gave a tight, expectant smile. My stomach churned. "Ladies and gentlemen," my father boomed, voice warm and authoritative. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate Emily and Aaron's beautiful union." Polite applause filled the room. Emily dabbed at her eyes for dramatic effect. My father continued, "Our family has always believed in generosity, in love, in supporting one another, a lie wrapped in satin." I took a small step forward, remaining near the wall. I could feel eyes shifting already, the crowd sensing something big was coming. My mother rested her hand on her chest in a theatrical gesture. "Oh, Charles," she whispered, just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Then he said it. "And today," he declared proudly, "we have a very special announcement." My breath stopped. Emily clutched her bouquet closer, smiling with carefully rehearsed innocence. My father held up the paper with a flourish. "Ava has graciously agreed to give her sister the Skyline District penthouse as a wedding gift." The applause erupted instantly. People cheered, someone whistled. A woman put her hand over her heart and whispered, "How generous." I didn't move, I didn't smile, I didn't clap. My mother nodded encouragingly toward me, as if I were a child who needed prompting to perform. "Ava," she called out sweetly, "come say a few words." My heart thudded once hard. Emily stepped forward, pretending to be overwhelmed. "Ava? Really? The penthouse?" Several guests turned to record the moment on their phones. The livestream icon glowed red from a table near the stage. I stepped out from the wall, voice steady. "No." The applause lulled, then died. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. My father frowned, confused, as if he'd misheard. "What was that?" I said. "No," I repeated. People shifted uncomfortably. My father held up the paper with a flourish. "Ava has graciously agreed to give her sister the Skyline District penthouse as a wedding gift." The applause erupted instantly. People cheered, someone whistled. A woman put her hand over her heart and whispered, "How generous." I didn't move, I didn't smile, I didn't clap. My mother nodded encouragingly toward me, as if I were a child who needed prompting to perform. "Ava," she called out sweetly, "come say a few words." Another added, "It's her sister's wedding. She should just go along." My mother stepped down from the stage, gliding toward me with a brittle smile and dead eyes. She took my arm grip like iron. "Ava," she hissed, "say yes." "No." She squeezed harder. "Think of your sister." Emily sniffled loudly, eyes shimmering with purposeful tears. "I just wanted to start my marriage with support from my family." "You're starting it with a lie," I said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. I took a small step forward, remaining near the wall. I could feel eyes shifting already, the crowd sensing something big was coming. My mother rested her hand on her chest in a theatrical gesture. "Oh, Charles," she whispered, just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Then he said it. "And today," he declared proudly, "we have a very special announcement." My breath stopped. Emily clutched her bouquet closer, smiling with carefully rehearsed innocence. Someone cleared their throat. A bridesmaid whispered, "What's happening?" My mother laughed nervously. "Ava, sweetheart, you must be overwhelmed. Don't worry, we can go over the details later." I shook my head. "There are no details. I never agreed to this." My father's jaw clenched so tight I could see a muscle twitch. He leaned toward the microphone, voice dropping into a warning tone. "Don't make a scene, not here." A man at the nearest table whispered, "She's ruining the moment." I met her gaze. "Love doesn't mean surrendering my own life for yours." Someone shouted, "Just give it to her." Another person muttered, "What a selfish sister." One woman clicked her tongue. "This is humiliating." My father gripped the microphone so hard the metal squeaked. "This is your last chance. Don't embarrass us. Say yes." The room held its breath. I felt every eye on me waiting for me to fold, to bow, to prove them right about who they thought I was. A wave of judgment crashed toward me. Strangers, relatives, people who knew nothing about my life dictating what I should give up, what I should offer, what I should endure. My breath steadied. "My living situation is none of your concern." My mother's face reddened. "Stop being dramatic." "I'm being factual," I replied. The crowd shifted, tension building like pressure in a boiler. Emily stepped forward again, voice trembling. "Ava, why are you doing this? I thought you loved me." Emily whispered urgently, "Mom, don't," but it was already too late. My mother's fury was spiraling. My father stepped down from the stage, abandoning the microphone completely. His voice boomed across the room, even without amplification. "Get out." The word echoed, bouncing off every crystal surface, settling like a heavy lid over the entire ballroom. People stared with wide eyes, waiting to see how far this spectacle would go. I felt the air shift. The tension coiled tighter. "I said no," I repeated. Calm and clear, my voice slicing through the ballroom silence. Phones rose higher. More guests hit record. The live stream numbers climbed. My mother's heels clicked sharply as she moved toward me again. Her expression had twisted into something raw and ugly. "You ungrateful girl," she spat under her breath. "After all we've done for you." "You haven't done anything for me without expecting control in return," I said quietly. Gasps again. For one suspended second, everything froze: the music, the murmurs, even the air. My diamond earring ripped free and skittered across the marble floor, spinning before coming to a stop near the cake table. My mother stood trembling, chest heaving, eyes wide and bright with rage. The microphone she still held amplified every ragged breath she took, broadcasting her fury to 100 horrified guests. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the slap had struck the entire room. I didn't touch my face. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply breathed, slow and steady, grounding myself against the sting. My vision sharpened, hyper-aware of every detail. The flicker of the candles, the tremble in my mother's fingers, the tightening grip of my father's jaw. Emily let out a soft, staged gasp, pressing a hand to her chest. A few guests covered their mouths. Someone's champagne flute slipped from their hand and shattered quietly against the floor. I bent down slowly, every movement deliberate, and picked up my earring. It felt warm, the stone catching the light in a tiny flash that contrasted sharply with the humiliation still humming in the air. I stood up, brushed off the dust, and reattached it carefully. Not rushing, not shaking. Let them wait. Let them sit with what they had witnessed. When I finished, I looked directly at my mother. "You shouldn't have done that." Gasps fluttered across the ballroom. My mother blinked furiously as if she couldn't believe I had spoken back. My father stepped forward, pointing toward the exit. "Get out." I held his stare. Gladly. Then I turned and began to walk. The room erupted not with noise, but with a frantic, disorganized scramble of emotions. Whispers, shuffles, the click-click-click of the photographer, capturing every second, because it was his job, and he didn't know whether to stop. I walked past the tables, past the guests shrinking out of my way, past Emily's wide-eyed, trembling pout. She reached out as if she wanted to touch my arm, but thought better of it. Her hand fell back to her side. I pushed open the ballroom doors without looking back. The hallway outside felt colder, quieter. The thick carpet muffled the fading chaos behind me. For the first time all morning I could hear my own heartbeat, steady, determined. I paused near a tall vase of lilies, letting my breath settle. A hotel attendant slipped out from behind a pillar, eyes round with shock. "Miss Morgan, do you need help?" "No," I said softly. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding," he whispered, pointing to a faint scrape where my earring had torn loose. I touched it gently. It's nothing. He hesitated, then whispered, "What your mother did, that wasn't right." For a moment his kindness cracked something in me. Not enough to cry, but enough to remind me how long it had been since anyone saw me as someone worth defending. I thanked him and moved toward the elevators. As I pressed the button, I heard someone behind me. "Ava, wait," I turned. It was Aaron's younger brother's phone clutched tightly in his hand. His face was pale. "They're live streaming," he said breathlessly. Emily wanted the whole reception online, but people saw the slap. It's everywhere. A cold wave rolled down my spine. Everywhere he held out the phone. The stream had thousands of live reactions already. Comments flew across the screen. "Did she just hit her? That mother is unhinged. Ava did nothing wrong. This is abuse." I exhaled slowly. "Thank you for telling me," I said. He nodded. This wasn't right. I'm sorry. I didn't blame him. He wasn't part of this. I stepped into the elevator when the doors finally opened. The hall fell away behind me as the metal panels slid shut, sealing me inside a small mirrored box where everything felt sharper. My cheeks still burned. My mind spun quietly, weaving itself back into control. I stared at my reflection, the faint redness, the stillness in my eyes, the poise that hadn't cracked. "You're okay," I whispered to myself. "You're okay." The elevator descended, humming softly. When the doors parted, I walked through the lobby. People stared. Some whispered. Some looked away quickly. A few looked like they wanted to apologize for what they'd seen. But most just stared the same way people stare at a car crash, horrified, fascinated, unable to look away. I ignored them all. Outside, the Seattle air hit me like a cleansing wave, cool and damp, heavy with approaching rain. The sky was a moody, bruised gray. It matched the ache in my cheek perfectly. A sleek black car idled at the curb. The driver stepped out as soon as he saw me. "Miss Morgan, yes. Mr. Liu instructed me to be on standby. He said to take you wherever you need to go." I froze. He already knew I'd need a ride. The driver nodded. He said it was likely. A bitter laugh escaped me. Of course he did. I slid into the back seat. My phone buzzed before I'd even buckled my seatbelt. "Ethan, saw the live stream. On standby. Your call." I typed back. "Keep your phone ready," he responded instantly. "Always." The car pulled away from the curb. Rain began to fall in gentle streaks across the windows, blurring the outlines of the hotel behind us until it became nothing more than a smudge of gold lights and distant music. Inside the car, my pulse slowed. My breath evened out. But beneath the calm, another feeling rose, one I had never allowed myself to acknowledge until now. Resolve. The kind that comes after being shoved too far. The kind that grows in the pit of your stomach when you realize there's no going back to the way things were. As we crossed into downtown skyscrapers shimmering through the rain, I closed my eyes and let the truth settle in my bones. My parents had humiliated me in front of 100 strangers. My mother had slapped me. My father had screamed in my face. And Emily, sweet, angelic golden Emily, had stood there soaking in the attention while the trap they set for me sprung perfectly around us. They thought I would break. They thought I would fold. They thought I would give away the one thing in my life that belonged only to me. They didn't know that I was done being their scapegoat. I opened my eyes as the car turned onto Pine Street. My penthouse tower rose into the sky ahead of us. The one thing they tried to strip from me, the one thing they couldn't touch. Inside that building, Ethan would be waiting for my signal. Inside that building, the next phase would begin. And back at the Watercrest Hotel, my family had no idea their perfect wedding was about to implode, starting with the man they least expected walking through the ballroom doors. The elevator doors closed behind me, sealing out the shouting, the gasps, the humiliation still vibrating through the ballroom walls. Inside the narrow metal box, I finally released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My cheek still pulsed from the slap heat spreading in slow waves under my skin, but strangely, my hands were steady. The mirrored panel reflected a version of me that didn't look broken. My hair was still pinned neatly. My dress still fell smooth and elegant. My spine still straight, shoulders still set. The only crack in the image was the faint bruise beginning to rise beneath my makeup. But in my eyes, something new flickered clarity. The elevator dinged. I stepped into the mezzanine hallway where the scent of lilies and citrus cleaner drifted through the air. A few hotel guests paused as I walked by, their expressions a mix of curiosity and sympathy. One woman reached out slightly, then pulled her hand back, unsure whether comfort would be welcome. A server stepped forward instead, his voice soft. "Miss Morgan, are you all right?" I nodded once. "I will be." He hesitated, then whispered, "No one deserves what happened in there." A surprising lump rose in my throat, not from pain, but from the simple shock of anyone acknowledging the truth. I thanked him quietly and continued toward the main lobby. Each step away from the ballroom felt like peeling off a layer of suffocating fabric. By the time I reached the towering glass doors leading outside, the weight on my chest had started to lift. My phone vibrated. "Ethan, I saw it. Are you safe?" I typed back quickly. "Phase 1 is active. Proceed." His response came instantly. "On my way." A storm brewed outside Seattle's signature drizzle, building into a steady rain. The sky was pewter gray, matching the ache blooming under my cheekbone. My ride, one of Northbridge's assigned drivers, stepped out of the car as soon as he spotted me. "Miss Morgan," he said with gentle urgency, "Mr. Liu told me to wait for your call." "Doors are open." Of course he had. Ethan always moved before the rest of the world noticed the danger. I climbed into the back seat, exhaling as the door clicked shut behind me. The leather smelled faintly of cedar and cool air. I leaned back as the car pulled away from the hotel, the city lights stretching into blurred streaks across the rain-soaked windows. My cheek throbbed again. I pressed my fingers to it, closing my eyes, letting the pain anchor me instead of shatter me. Another vibration. Livestream 1754 viewers. Comments exploding. I opened the feed. There I was on dozens of screens, standing frozen as my mother's hand swung across my face. The slap replayed in slow motion, the sound amplified, the shock on my face, the ripple of gasps. People online were already choosing sides. She struck her own daughter, that poor woman. Protect her. What a narcissistic mother. Team Ava. I didn't care about internet strangers. I cared that the world now had evidence, unfiltered, unedited, of what my family had tried to hide for years. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "Miss, do you want the news turned off?" "No," I said. "Drive." He nodded and focused on the road. Downtown Seattle rose ahead of us, the skyline gleaming through sheets of rain. It looked steady, certain, everything my family wasn't. My phone buzzed again, another message. "Unknown number, we saw what happened. Stay strong." I frowned. Then another unknown number. "Your parents planned this, didn't they? They talked about it yesterday." My breath hitched. So someone else knew. Someone else had overheard. The trap wasn't subtle. They were counting on spectacle, on pressure, on weaponizing the crowd to cage me into compliance. I let the messages fade and turned my head toward the window. Rain droplets raced each other down the glass, pulling long, trembling streaks of city light behind them. I remembered last night, standing in my penthouse, sipping late-night tea while reviewing expansion numbers for the Asia-Pacific branch. The glass walls around me glowed with the city's reflection. That place wasn't just a home, it was an accomplishment. A sanctuary. The one space where I wasn't the difficult daughter, the cold sister, the burden. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. "I'm 10 minutes away from the hotel." I felt something warm in my chest, a tight, fierce gratitude. Ethan wasn't the type to insert himself into personal chaos. But he'd seen the live stream, he saw the slap, and he wasn't letting this go. Seattle blurred past neon and rain, merging into one long streak of motion. When the car finally turned onto my street, the tower where my penthouse sat rose like a monument against the stormy sky. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the water below, glowing softly even through the rain. My home, my one true refuge. Inside the lobby, James the doorman straightened when he saw me approach. His expression shifted from polite professionalism to worry. "Miss Morgan, is your face did someone?" "Yes," I answered. "But I'm fine." His jaw tightened. "If anyone tries to come here tonight, anyone who hurt you, they won't get through me." Something in my chest softened. "Thank you, James." The elevator ride up to the penthouse was silent except for the hum of machinery. When the doors opened, I stepped into the serene stillness of my home. Rain streaked down the windows. The city glowed like a constellation. Everything felt soft and safe. I placed my clutch on the kitchen counter, grabbed an ice pack, and pressed it against my cheek. The cold seeped in, soothing the sting. I stood there, staring out at the skyline, letting the truth settle over me. I hadn't lost anything tonight. I hadn't been weakened. I hadn't been defeated. I had been pushed. And maybe finally pushed far enough to stop letting them script my life. My phone rang again. A familiar name lit up the screen. "Ethan Liu calling," I answered. "I'm here," he said. "Entering the hotel now." I looked out at the glittering city, my cheek throbbing, my pulse steady. "They wanted a show," I whispered. "They're about to get one." Because in 1 hour, Ethan Liu, calm, calculating, powerful Ethan would walk through those ballroom doors. And when he did, my parents would learn exactly how dangerous it was to corner a woman who had finally reclaimed her voice. Ethan walked into the ballroom like he owned the building, the city, and every breath inside it. The moment the doors opened behind him, the violinists faltered mid-note. Conversations stuttered into silence. Heads turned one by one like a wave of recognition sweeping across a shoreline. He didn't rush. He didn't smile. He didn't acknowledge the stares, the whispers, or the cameras still filming. He simply walked calm, precise, unreadable. My mother, halfway through berating a bridesmaid, froze mid-gesture. Her hand hovered in the air, as if someone had hit pause on her rage. My father rose from his chair so abruptly it scraped loudly against the floor. Emily stopped crying long enough to gape at him, mascara smudged in perfect streaks. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God, is that Ethan Liu?" Another voice followed, hushed but urgent. "Northbridge Capital. That's him." Even the servers stopped moving. Even the chandeliers seemed to tremble. Ethan paused at the foot of the stage, surveying every face with a level assessing stare, taking in my father's panicked posture, my mother's trembling jaw, Emily's blotchy sobs, the guests clutching champagne as if it might shield them from whatever was unfolding. "Where is Ava Morgan?" he said, voice low but carrying. My father swallowed hard. "She left." Ethan nodded once, as though confirming something he already knew. Then he turned his attention to the room at large. I saw the live stream. Those 5 words rippled through the crowd like a dropped match in dry grass. My mother moved forward, quickly twisting her mouth into a brittle smile. "Mr. Liu, this is a family matter." "No," Ethan cut in, his tone, soft but sharp enough to silence her. "It became a corporate matter the moment you attempted to seize a protected asset in front of a public audience." Murmurs erupted. "Protected asset? What is he talking about? Is he serious?" My father stepped forward, hands raised. "Mr. Liu, surely there's been a misunderstanding." Ethan opened his leather briefcase and laid a pair of sleek folders on the round head table right next to the untouched champagne flutes set aside for the couple's toast. "I don't deal in misunderstandings, Charles." "Charles, not Mr. Morgan." A deliberate demotion, my father's face drained of color. Ethan continued. "This wedding has already been broadcast to thousands. Your wife struck your daughter. You publicly announced a fabricated gift. And then you attempted to force her compliance through social pressure." Gasps scattered around the room. Several phones lifted to capture his words. My mother's voice trembled. "We are her parents." Ethan met her gaze without flinching. Parents who put on a public spectacle to take what doesn't belong to you. The bridesmaids stiffened. Guests exchanged horrified glances. A few people left their seats altogether unable to look at my mother without judgment. Emily wiped her eyes and whimpered, "This was supposed to be my day. Ava ruined everything." Ethan turned to her, expression unreadable. "Your sister protected what she earned. You don't get to claim it as compensation for a wedding." Emily's mouth dropped open. He wasn't raising his voice. He didn't need to. Authority sat in his tone like a blade sharpened on cold steel. My father tried again, voice cracking. "Mr. Liu, can we please discuss this in private?" "No," Ethan said simply. "You chose a public forum." The room buzzed with shock. Ethan lifted the first folder. "This is Clause 11.6, which prevents the forced transfer of corporate protected real estate under duress." He turned to the crowd. "Her penthouse falls under Northbridge jurisdiction. Not family whim." My mother blinked rapidly. "We didn't know." "You didn't care to know," Ethan said. "There's a difference." A few guests hummed in agreement. Then Ethan placed the second folder on the table with a soft thud. "This is the suspension of Morgan Industrial's credit line." A rippling gasp tore through the ballroom. My father staggered a step. You can't do that." "Your misconduct gives me every right to do that," Ethan replied. Guests exchanged horrified glances. A few people left their seats altogether unable to look at my mother without judgment. Emily wiped her eyes and whimpered, "This was supposed to be my day. Ava ruined everything." Ethan turned to her, expression unreadable. "Your sister protected what she earned. You don't get to claim it as compensation for a wedding." Emily's mouth dropped open. He wasn't raising his voice. He didn't need to. "Your daughter is one of the most valuable executives at Northbridge. She leads our Asia-Pacific development. She negotiates multi-million-dollar deals with confidence and integrity." Gasps. More whispers. People turned to one another in shock. My mother actually swayed, gripping the table for balance. "Ava works for you, not works for me," Ethan corrected. "She is indispensable to my company." Emily shook her head violently. "That's not possible. She would have told us." Ethan turned to her. "She didn't tell you because you never listened." The ballroom went dead silent. My father's voice broke. "Mr. Liu, please. We can talk about this. We can salvage this." Ethan straightened. "You should have thought about salvaging your relationship with your daughter before you humiliated her." The tension in the room thickened like smoke. No one moved. No one breathed. Ethan reached for his briefcase. "This isn't over. Northbridge will initiate a full review of Morgan Industrial. Legal will contact you by morning." My mother grabbed his sleeve desperately. "You can't do this. This is Emily's wedding." He pulled his arm back calmly. "And you turned it into evidence." A low groan escaped my father. Emily sobbed harder. A bridesmaid whispered something that sounded like, "This is a disaster." Guests were already standing, collecting their belongings, eager to distance themselves before things got worse. Ethan looked one last time at the cluster of my family crumbling, panicked, exposed. "When you decided to attack Ava," he said quietly, "you forgot one thing." My mother blinked. "What? You forgot who she is." And with that, he turned and walked out of the ballroom, leaving their world collapsing behind him. Chaos rippled through the ballroom the moment Ethan left. The doors hadn't even fully closed behind him before the room erupted in murmurs, shocked gasps, and frantic whispers. The carefully arranged roses on each table looked suddenly out of place, fragile decorations sitting in the middle of a disaster scene. Emily burst into fresh sobs, mascara rivers streaking down her cheeks. "This is my wedding," she wailed, clutching her bouquet like it might anchor her to some version of reality that no longer existed. Her new husband's family gathered in a tight circle, faces drawn, whispering urgently. I could see his mother glance toward the ballroom doors, then at Emily, then shake her head with a look of pure disapproval. "This is unacceptable," she said sharply. "We cannot be associated with whatever this is." Emily froze mid-sob, staring at her mother-in-law like she'd been slapped. What do you mean? Her father-in-law stepped forward with a grave expression. We need to leave. This is no longer a safe environment for our family, and we need to have a serious discussion. The marriage needs to be paused until we understand the nature of this behavior. The word paused sliced through the air. Emily choked. Paused? You mean you're calling off the wedding? We're taking our son home, the mother-in-law said firmly. We can discuss the rest later. A stunned hush fell as the entire groom's family walked out together. Emily let out a strangled cry, reaching after them, but Aaron gently pulled his arm away and followed his parents. The doors closed behind them with a finality that echoed louder than any of the drama that had come before. Around the room, guests began rising from their seats like spectators evacuating a stadium after a disastrous game. Whispered judgments floated through the air. I've never seen anything like this. That CEO made it clear. They're finished. Imagine hitting your daughter in public. This wedding is cursed. My mother, who had stood rigid since Ethan's confrontation, finally snapped. Stop leaving, she shouted toward the retreating guests. This is a happy day. Sit down. Everyone sit down. Nobody listened. My father stumbled toward the champagne tower and caught himself on the table, his complexion a sickly gray. The planner quietly moved a floral arrangement out of his way, as if anticipating his collapse. One of the bridesmaids approached timidly. Mrs. Morgan, maybe we should take a moment. My mother spun on her. Do not tell me what to do. I'm the mother of the bride. The bridesmaid flinched and stepped back, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I slipped into the ballroom just long enough to witness what was unfolding. Not to revel in it, just to see the consequences they never believed would come. 3 businessmen in tailored suits stood in a corner, murmuring with troubled expressions. Did you hear what he said? Credit line suspension? Morgan Industrial can't survive without Northbridge. They're done. We should reconsider the contract. My father overheard the last sentence and whipped around. Gentlemen, please, let's discuss this. My daughter, she's exaggerating things. You know how dramatic she can be. The tallest man shook his head. We saw the live stream, Charles. This isn't drama, it's ethics. My father's shoulders sagged as they walked away. Near the side doors, a small crowd of hotel staff and servers whispered among themselves. The banquet manager held a hand to her ear, listening through her earpiece. We're receiving calls from local news stations, she said quietly. The footage is spreading. A reporter in a navy coat appeared at the entrance with a camera operator, but the hotel's security staff intercepted them. The reporter still managed to shout, Is it true the Northbridge CEO confronted your family? Is the wedding being shut down? My mother screamed, No comment, get out. But the damage was irreversible. A guest I didn't recognize approached her timidly. Mrs. Morgan, we're so sorry, but we're going to head out early. No, you are not, my mother barked. You will not leave. The guest and his wife backed away in horror before turning and hurrying out of the room. Emily rushed toward her, sobbing uncontrollably. Mom, they're leaving. Everyone is leaving. Fix this. I am trying, my mother screeched. But no one is listening. Why is everyone turning against us? The answer, of course, was simple. They had exposed themselves. The facade of wealth Grace poised, shattered in front of 100 witnesses and thousands more online. My phone buzzed. Assistant boss, 3 companies just contacted me. They're pulling out of negotiations with your father. Another wants a statement from Northbridge to ensure we aren't associated with his behavior. I exhaled. The consequences had begun, and each one tightened the noose around the very people who believed they were untouchable. A bridesmaid grabbed Emily's arm gently. We need to get you somewhere quiet. Emily screamed, No, Ava did this. She ruined my wedding. Even from across the room, I felt the weight of her accusations slam into me, but I didn't move. I didn't respond. I knew better than to argue with people committed to rewriting reality. My father approached my mother, gripping her shoulders. Carol, calm down. We need to think. She shook him off. Think Ethan Liu walked in here and humiliated us. He threatened our business, and that ungrateful girl made him do it. She didn't do anything. said a voice from behind them. Everyone turned. One of the older cousins, someone who'd barely spoken to me in years, stood with his arms crossed. "You and Emily ambushed her," he said. "Everyone saw it. Everyone knows." My mother's jaw dropped open, trembling, like she couldn't comprehend her narrative cracking apart. My father staggered back a step, sinking into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I quietly stepped out of the ballroom, unnoticed by most, though a few guests gave me sympathetic glances as I passed. Two women near the door whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "That poor girl. She didn't deserve any of that. Her mother slapped her. In public." What kind of family does that? Their words didn't make me smile. If anything, they made me feel a strange sort of mourning for a family I had always wanted but never had. As I walked down the hallway toward the exit, my phone vibrated again. "Ethan. The hotel confrontation is done. They're panicking. I'm heading out. Brace yourself, tomorrow will be messy." I typed back, "I'm ready." Outside, cool rain fell in delicate threads from the darkening sky. Seattle felt quieter than usual, hushed as though the city itself was giving me space to breathe. I inhaled the cold air deeply, letting it cleanse the last remnants of the ballroom's suffocating chaos. This wasn't over. But for the first time that day, I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't bracing for impact. My family's empire had begun to crumble, but none of it was my doing. I walked toward the car waiting at the curb and opened the door, slowly, pausing once more as the rain tapped softly against the asphalt. "Tomorrow becomes professional," I whispered to myself. Then I stepped inside and let the door close behind me. Seattle woke up to my family's humiliation before I did. I opened my eyes to the faint glow of morning slipping between the curtains of my penthouse, unaware that the entire city had already watched the slap, the screaming, the confrontation, the panic again and again on every social platform imaginable. My phone buzzed on the nightstand with what felt like an electrical vibration. Dozens of notifications, dozens more behind them. News alerts, emails, missed calls, mentions. And one message pinned at the top from Ethan. "Brace yourself. The business world moves fast." I sat up slowly, pressing a hand to my cheek. The swelling had gone down, but the memory was fresh, sharp enough to sting even now. I breathed once deep and deliberate before opening the first email. It was from one of my father's biggest clients, a multi-million-dollar account. Subject line, "Urgent contract reassessment." The body was even shorter. "We are suspending all negotiations effective immediately. We cannot move forward while the video remains public." I opened another, and another, and another, all the same. Polite corporate language wrapped around a single message. "Your father's behavior has consequences." I swung my legs out of bed and walked barefoot across the cool hardwood floor, stopping in front of the window. Seattle's skyline shimmered beneath a soft veil of morning fog. It was beautiful, steady, indifferent, calm. Everything my family was not. My assistant texted next. "Boss, 3 partners pulled out overnight. 2 more want statements. Reporters are calling." I typed back, "Handle it as no comment." Then I turned my phone over, screen down, and let the silence hold me for a moment. A luxury I'd never been allowed in my family. When I finally walked into Northbridge headquarters later that morning, the lobby fell quiet. Not awkward quiet, not judgment quiet, something more reverent, respectful. People nodded at me, some with sympathy, some with admiration. Someone whispered, "That's her." Another said, "She didn't flinch." I kept walking, heels tapping in a steady rhythm that felt more like control than movement. On the 42nd floor, the senior staff had gathered in small clusters near the glass conference rooms. Eyes lifted when I stepped out of the elevator. Someone stepped forward, a colleague from research. "Ava," she said gently, "we saw what happened. You handled yourself with dignity." "Thank you," I replied, and for once the words didn't feel empty. Then Ethan's assistant appeared. "Mr. Liu is waiting for you." Of course he was. Inside the executive conference room, Ethan stood with his back to me, sleeves rolled up, reviewing something on the digital display wall. Financial data projections, red flags blinking across my father's company's numbers. He didn't turn immediately, but when he did, his eyes scanned my face as if checking for fresh injuries. "How's your cheek?" "It's fine. You shouldn't downplay it." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just done letting it control the narrative." A flicker of approval crossed his face. Then he tapped the display behind him. "Morgan Industrial is collapsing," he said bluntly. "Your father needs the credit line extension immediately. Without it, he'll default within 30 days. I didn't react. "He didn't tell me." "He didn't tell anyone," Ethan said. "He hoped to handle it quietly. But after last night, there is no quietly." I walked closer, studying the projected data. Declines, losses, risk assessments, corporate red flags everywhere. "When did you know?" I asked. Ethan met my eyes. 6 months ago. That hit me harder than the slap. 6 months. The entire time I'd been negotiating overseas, expanding our markets, earning more for Northbridge than any other executive in my division.